I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network.
So, Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia, you just came up here from the UN, and I have to ask, what were you doing at the UN?
Well, this morning I just popped by a session. It was a session of women leaders. Cherie Blair gave a speech. It was a lot of first ladies, mainly from Africa.
And you.
Places. And me. Well, it was a large lecture hall, and I sat in the back and tried to be inconspicuous and listen in.
Why did you go to that?
Well, they invited me, and it looked like an interesting session. And the one in particular that I was interested in is, oh dear, this is a bad plug for them, but I liked their project, No Mothers Die. I think that's what it's called, nomothersdie.org.
That's a worthy cause, it sounds like.
So, yeah, it's
no one could disagree with that.
Maternal mortality, right. It's pretty universally, most people, you may think, I had a friend of mine, a Saudi Arabian friend, she said, maybe people think women should have more children, less children, whatever. Pretty much nobody wants them to die in childbirth. So it's a very easy global issue that everybody can get behind. So.
You can't picture a Wikipedia-style argument of editors, going way deep on this issue.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Because, you can always, for an issue, you can say, oh, it's a great issue, but is it the one we should really be focusing on, and what's it going to cost compared to other things that might be more economical and save even more lives and whatever. There's always that type of argument. I have no idea what the facts are in this case. But
Well, it seems like you do. Well, let's reel it back a little bit. Wikipedia, and I even want to reel back further than that. How did you, you've created, I don't know if it's the 5th largest site in the world, the 6th largest site, there's different numbers all over the place. You created one of the largest sites in the world, clearly one of the most used sites in the world. Where do you come from? I don't know if you like comic books, but I always enjoy knowing the secret origins of the superheroes. So where did you come from? I know you're from Alabama, and you graduated high school early.
Yeah, from Alabama, quite a geeky kid, and did graduate early, although I didn't skip grades, I just started early. Mm-hmm. My mother and grandmother ran a small private school, and I just went to work with my mom, and then just started kindergarten early, and just kept going, and that was that. But yeah, it's actually interesting because I think a lot of my worldview and personality I can see now being shaped by various factors in my upbringing. So at that time, of course, in Huntsville, Alabama, where I was growing up, is where the Space and Rocket Center is. And after World War II, they brought Wernher von Braun and all the rocket scientists over. And it was where
I didn't know that. They all lived in Alabama?
Yeah. They brought them to Huntsville to do the scientific development of the Saturn V rockets and sort of the moonshots and all that. And so because of that, the space program was like our hometown sports heroes, And so growing up, I mean, where I grew up, sometimes the windows would rattle in the house when they were testing the Saturn V rockets nearby, because they're quite powerful, and we lived close enough that it would rattle the windows. So I have that kind of a memory, and so it led me towards a scientific and technological kind of upbringing. But then again, it is still Alabama. It's not. It's an unusual place. Huntsville is kind of an oasis, because many people are there from other parts of the country. But still, it's very polite and nice, and I'm a nice person, and I think that personality trait does come from sort of a very Southern hospitality kind of perspective.
So do you think that, so you refer to yourself as a nice person, and Wikipedia almost feels like a different sort of, well, there's an obvious way it's a different sort of site in that you're not having a $200 billion IPO. So that's been brought up infinite times with you in interviews. We don't have to go over it. Clearly, Wikipedia is a great and free thing, and it would ruin it if it somehow had ads on it, like no one would use it. But where do you think, obviously at some point you wanted to make money, and then this switched, and I'd like to think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that it came from just the beauty of seeing something you create grow so organically. I think that provides much more pleasure in some ways than just seeing a bank account grow. And I may be wrong or right. I don't know.
No, that's pretty good, actually. I mean, the thing is, there is no sense in which I am opposed to making money. I think it's, there are dishonorable ways of making money, so it never should be the most important thing, but I think an honorable way of making money is a great thing. But for Wikipedia, it really is almost like an artistic statement. I mean, it's something I think culturally is very special. It says something upbeat about human beings, that people will devote a huge amount of time and passion trying to get it right and make it better and share with other people. And I don't mean to be too utopian about it. We have our internal quarrels and squabbles. We're human beings.
There's definitely internal dystopias within Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, what's interesting about those, when they're going well, you can have quite a heated debate, but with a real sense of respect, and also that, hey, we're all working together trying to make Wikipedia better, so at the end of the day, let's honor that. It doesn't always go well, obviously. Sometimes people just get nasty and it's ugly, and hopefully they kiss and make up a few days later. But
which sometimes doesn't happen, but I think that's interesting too. Like when the fights by their nature are also interesting, because if you view history as written by the winners, Wikipedia is different from that, in that winners and losers, if you want to call them that, are both there equally, sharing their opinion and information.
Yeah, I mean, this history written by the winners, tends to be a statement about economic and, more importantly, governmental control of the history curriculum and so forth. Whereas now it's written by everyone. History is written by the Wikipedia.
Because of Wikipedia.
Yeah, exactly. So, you get really interesting people from all sides of a question. Hopefully, we get nice people from all sides of a question so that we have a civilized discussion and not just screaming at each other. But, some issues are quite emotional, and it's hard for people.
Yeah, and, emotional doesn't seem as bad as when it's malevolent, so when people are like just trashing people's pages for spiteful reasons. But if it's an actual fight over opinions or whatever, that could again, the fight itself is history.
Yeah, I remember many years ago now, I remember a really prominent early contributor who would do fantastic work in, as I seem to recall, biology or something like this, and he was great, very friendly, very nice contributor. But if he got anywhere near Israel-Palestine articles, he just couldn't behave himself. He was too emotional about it, and not in a negative way. The issue meant a lot to him, and it was very hard for him to not get exasperated with people and so forth.
Yeah, there's probably I was talking to one person about this. There's probably a couple dozen issues where you have to be on one side or the other. You can't even say a balanced point of view because both sides then will hate you.
Yeah, that's true. There's a few, but I mean, in general, like one of the things we have a lot of success with is what I call going meta. So you can imagine a very kind and thoughtful Catholic priest and a very kind and thoughtful Planned Parenthood activist, and they're never going to agree on
Right.
the issue of abortion, but they're able to step back from it and say, okay, look, I understand Wikipedia can't advocate for my position, but we can accurately describe. So we can say, we don't say abortion is a sin, we say, according to the Catholic Church, the following position, and the Pope has written this, and critics have responded thusly. And actually, kind people can do that. And at the end of the day, what's interesting about it is sometimes the most ideological people are the most comfortable with that because they just think, look, if you had a neutral explanation of the topic, obviously you would read it through and you would agree with me. And it's people who are less certain of their own beliefs, they're actually fearful that they might be wrong, are the ones who get nervous about even hearing or allowing the other side to speak because I think they're afraid they'll hear something that causes cognitive dissonance.
That's interesting because both issues that you just brought up, one was the Israel-Palestine issue, the other is, basically pro-life versus pro-choice. Both those issues involve somebody thinks somebody is killing somebody incorrectly.
Yeah.
So you would think that those would be violent issues, violently discussed. And I guess in some cases they are, but you're saying sometimes
they're not. Sometimes they're all right, and part of that has to do with having enough people in the community who care more about the idea of Wikipedia and the idea of trying to be a neutral place than they care about any specific issue.
Well, let's talk about the idea of Wikipedia, because obviously when you started it, it was just a site with a few articles by definition. So how did you get that? I mean, you created the dream of what every site builder in the universe wants to create. You created this enormous viral community, and now you're in the top 10 websites in the world. So what kind of do you think contributed to that initial viralness? What recommendation would you have if somebody wanted to have a site equally viral?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a few things. So one of the interesting things about an encyclopedia is that one article, just a standalone article, if you write a good, decent article about, polar bears, it's actually useful. It's useful even if the rest of the encyclopedia isn't even written yet. It's just a good article about polar bears, and people will find it in a search engine and so forth. So that was one key, is that the site became useful for people who stumbled upon it before it was comprehensive. We've had a dictionary site, and actually a dictionary is actually not that useful until it becomes comprehensive, because you go to a dictionary, you look up a word, and if you've only got 100 words in there, it doesn't really help you that much. So I think that that ability to be useful from day one is really important. And I think, so if we think about viral community like Facebook, people always talk about network effects. It's more valuable the more people are on it. And that's true for sure. But with Facebook, that's only true for me, it's about 500 people, right? It's not, the Facebook must have added, I don't know, let's just make up a number, 10 million people in the last month. That has no impact on me because I don't even know those people, right? It's that smaller group. So Facebook was able to be very useful, say, at the Harvard campus from day one, because suddenly, I don't care if the University of Alabama is not on here yet. I don't even know anybody there. So that's a part of it, is being useful very early on. Another thing that I think is a real factor with Wikipedia is that people, they feel that it's a valid use of their time, and they think, gee, I'm spending time here. Should I be wasting so much time on this? And they think, well, yeah, I'm making the world a better place. It's a good thing to do. I could have spent the last 4 hours playing World of Warcraft, but instead I sort of tried to fix all the incorrectly placed commas across a bunch of articles or something like that.
I guess so you're saying somehow word got out that here's something useful you can do with your time, and kind of geek out on it as well.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And then also, things like it was much more of a prominent and interesting phenomenon in the early days, is that if somebody makes a link to something but we don't have it, it's a red link. And so you would, in the early days, you would see lots of red links and some blue ones. And quickly by clicking, you say, blue, that means it's there. Red means we don't have anything yet. So then when you're reading, you suddenly go, coffee. Ooh, wait, I know about coffee. No one's written about coffee. Coffee is a beverage. Save, And it was fun. And there was that kind of...
So some gamification.
Yeah, except this is before anybody invented the term gamification, And I actually have a lot of beef with a lot of what goes on under the title of gamification.
Why is that? Even though it's like a natural status hierarchy sort of thing?
I just think so I always concede it just doesn't work very well on me. So I get it if other people enjoy it. But for me, if you go on, I don't know, let's say Foursquare, I think they have points. Oh, you can become the mayor. Actually, I kind of like becoming the mayor. That's kind of cool. I've never done it anywhere, but, badges and, ooh, congratulations, you just got 90 points. Like, what the fuck do I need 90 points for? I mean, there's no meaning to me whatsoever. Oh, you've moved up the leaderboard. Of what? It doesn't... because a lot of the gamification doesn't connect to anything real.
It only connects to the biology in your brain. Like, so where as mammals, we want to climb up. Chimpanzees, you're at one status or you're at another status. So there's any hierarchy you're in, you want to climb up or down.
Yeah, but if you think about it, suppose you had a job in an organization, and every day you had to wear a badge that had a number on it that tells how much people like you or not. That sounds like a pretty hellish place to work.
That's work in general, though, your job title.
Yeah, but without the badge, right, then you can say, it becomes more human. I think a lot of gamification involves putting numbers on things that you can't sum up in one number. You can say, this person, they're maybe not the most brilliant person, but they really work hard and they're very nice and they're a good team player. And I like that about them. Or you can say, this guy is brilliant, but he's kind of an asshole. And that's a problem because we've got work to do and we kind of have to put up with his assholeness to get his brilliance, etc. So you get these complicated human judgments that are very hard to sum up in, 4 stars on a gamification badge.
Right. But it seems like, come to think of it, you've spent your life avoiding gamification. Like, you've gone from, I don't think you've ever had like a quote unquote regular job. I mean, you were an options trader for a while.
Yeah, that was kind of a regular job.
Right, but still your ups and downs weren't based on your job title. It was based on, how your trading was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And, I always say, I'm very fortunate in my life to have become somehow successful because I'm really quite a bad employee. I get up every day and I do the most interesting thing. And that's a problem in life, but it can be also an amazing thing in life. And so, it leads to issues like, not really having the right constitution for climbing up a ladder, per se, because you've got to do this and that and tick all the boxes and so on, and I'd just rather do something interesting. So
when it was clear that Wikipedia, it was a bad idea to turn it into for-profit, you did start Wikia, which is a for-profit company, which many companies use to create their own wikis and so on. How's that going?
Wikia is doing fantastically well. And that's a bit of a misdescription, actually. So Wikia is not generally companies starting their own wikis and things like that. It's more communities of fans. So
like Wikipedia for Star Wars.
Wikipedia, fantastic. It's one of the most brilliant names
my favorite
we ever came up with. But we've got like the Game of Thrones wiki and all those. And for video games, obviously we've got a huge swath of those. And it's any communities of fans who want to document something in excruciating detail. And it's doing very well. According to ClientCast, we're ranked about number 20. Pretty popular.
Well, is there any kind of search engine that searches across all the wikis out there that are public? Because that would be pretty good, I think.
That would be interesting. No. I think you could probably, at Google, type your search term and then site:wikipedia.org, site:wikia.com. That would get not all of them, though. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good idea.
And what's your plans with that? Like, are you just going to keep growing that? Are you still heavily involved with the company?
Yeah, I'm somewhat involved, but I'm not. So we've got a CEO who's in California and staff, and I'm involved mainly in helping promote it and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the board, but I don't have any day-to-day management responsibilities. Actually, I don't have any day-to-day responsibilities at all. So, it's pretty independent of me at this point. So I just sort of go to the board meetings and cheer everyone on. They're doing great work, and current plan, just keep growing. We just raised a bunch of money, doing a joint venture in Japan to try to grow the Japanese site, things like that.
And you're also very active on Quora, which in some ways also reminds me of I don't want to say it's like a for-profit Wikipedia because it's not as comprehensive, it's not an encyclopedia, but it's a way for anybody to log onto a site and contribute and provide answers and help people. Yeah. And the accuracy is unclear, but as more and more people get involved, the accuracy gets better and better. And it's a for-profit company, but it acts like a not-for-profit.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because one of the things I think Quora has done a good job of is that they have a general tone and attitude in the community that's pretty nice. So people get in fights everywhere. They're human beings, but generally speaking, you'll see people, somebody asks a question, somebody answers, and then somebody comments on it, and usually the comment is not, you're a fucking idiot. Usually the comment is like, oh, you may have overlooked this, or also to consider that. And it is interesting because sometimes people say, oh, does it compete with Wikipedia? Not really. It's a question and answer site. Most of it's about evaluations of opinion, which are perfectly valid. I don't mean mere opinion, but, things like, I just answered a question recently, something like, if I had $50,000 to spend on a car, why would I buy a Hyundai? And I said, well, I own a Hyundai. So, I said, and a lot of the first answers were sort of why you wouldn't buy a Hyundai. And I said, no, they asked why you would. So let's give all the positive bits of that. And, it's just fun because then people responded and it was just a nice conversation. And it's kind of there's so many nasty places online that it's nice they've been able to manage that. But that is a good example of a site where there is a lot of gamification, which I basically just ignore. So you get credits for people uploading their answers, and you collect the credits. And interestingly, I don't think they have a leaderboard. So I don't think you can...
No, they don't, specifically.
Sometimes people ask the question, who has the most credits? And then somebody wrote a script to sort of hunt through the site for high-ranking people or whatever. So, as you say, humans like to do that sort of thing. But for me, it's a good example of like, okay, well, there is this point-getting thing, but I didn't really care. And you can set your price to answer. So if I wanted to get credits, I would just boost my price up. But actually, I usually keep it set to 0 unless I'm really busy.
I do as well.
Yeah, because I just think if I don't like your question, I won't answer it. And if it's an interesting question or fun, I want to answer it. I don't care if I get any credits for it or not. Like, what's the point? I don't even know what the credits are for. So, yeah, and I like it. I like that you never know who's going to pop up and ask you a kind of a funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of fascinating people on Quora who have signed up. Now, on Wikipedia, what would you say have been the most intense battles? Like, have you had to get involved in kind of disputes on Wikipedia?
Yeah, I'm always involved in policy and sort of trying to help with disputes and things like that.
But in the categories themselves or in the topics themselves?
Yeah, really, really tough ones are usually about things that are a bit possibly surprising to outsiders. So people assume we're going to have a big fight about George W. Bush or something like that. But, that's actually pretty straightforward. We know what it means to be neutral. You're going to have to say some of the criticism, say some of the praise, make sure you've got everybody covered. It's not that hard. The hard things are really like editorial matters, sort of matters of editorial style. So, debates about... there was a big argument about the M dash versus dash, which is there's two different kinds of dash characters, and if you're a real font geek, it really upsets you when people use the wrong one.
That's funny.
And then there was a whole sort of brawl about that. There's arguments about fairly arcane matters, like what do you call? Well, this is one of the classic ones. Is what do you call the rivers in Poland? Most of the rivers in Poland are known in English by their German names for historical reasons. This is very upsetting to some Polish people. And there's some evidence that that's changing, that the mainstream sources are beginning to sort of refer to the rivers in Poland by their Polish names. And so when do we change, or how do we do that? How do we refer to that? What's the right style?
Could there ever be like a vicious cycle, though, where editors are just constantly deleting each other's stuff and then it goes on forever?
Yeah, so one of the things there is British versus American English. And there, I'd say our basic rule I always say is please relax. But there's more details to it. Like first and foremost, don't just go around changing from one to the other, because it's just annoying to everybody. Like, if that's your life's mission, to fix Americans' bad way of writing, just don't do that, or vice versa. And if an article's been started using one language version, unless you've got a good reason, just leave it that way. But then there's things like topics that are quite specific to that country. So if you're writing about the British labor unions in the 1950s, probably you just want to have British spelling in that article. Why not? It's a mainly British topic, and most of the people who are going to be expert on it are speaking British English. So we have a diversity there, and it usually doesn't erupt into too big of a quarrel, but sometimes you get sad little fights about stupid things.
Now, it seems like, Google is really, in many cases, just the middleman between the human and the information they want to get, which is on Wikipedia. So if I want to know about Jimmy Wales, I type Jimmy Wales into Google, but really I'm going to Wikipedia to read about Jimmy Wales. I mean, you're the number one search result, I think, in about 60% of search terms, and then you're number 2 or 3 probably in the rest. So kind of a criticism of Google is that Wikipedia is the real search engine in most cases, and it seems like, given that's the case, and given that there are so many businesses built on top of helping people optimize their sites for Google, I'm surprised there's not more businesses built on top of the idea of helping people optimize their sites for Wikipedia. So, for instance, and I've seen some marketing companies do this to optimize their clients for their Wikipedia pages, make sure they're mentioned on a lot of other Wikipedia pages. So there are some business models there. I also think there's an education business model. Like, if I could tell my kids, don't go to school, just read 10 Wikipedia pages a day, and I want you to edit 1 Wikipedia page a week. That's enough school you have to do. I think they would get a better education.
That might be, I don't know. Well, on that first point, it's something that we struggle with a lot, because there's a lot of that kind of behavior goes on that's really quite unethical, and including a lot of lying, pretending to be someone you're not, etc.
Yeah, because there's a trick of if I mention something on, let's say, Huffington Post, now I have a citation which I can use on a Wikipedia page. Like, that's the kind of classic manipulation.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it depends on where it is on Huffington Post. If it's just your personal blog on Huffington Post, that probably wouldn't be much accepted as a source.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, really, if people want to influence Wikipedia, their best bet is to try and influence the news. And the best way to influence the news is don't do bad things that get reported on. But but I mean, I do think that there is room for companies to do things that don't happen nearly enough to enhance their Wikipedia presence without being unethical. I mean, one of the classic things to do is, get some really good photos of your CEO and release them on your website under a free license, and then just ping the Wikipedia community saying, hey, you don't have a photo of my guy, this one's under a free license, do you want it? And then people go, oh, yeah, sure, great. So now, you've got a nice photo there. And, so there's a lot of things like that. Certainly, people who are have some kind of assets, pictures, photos, product photos, that sort of thing, just release them under free license, and we might not use them, but we might. And in the meantime, if we do, then it makes a nicer presentation. So there's that kind of thing that people can do. But a lot of the people who are in that business of trying to help people with Wikipedia are really selling snake oil, in the sense that basically all that somebody should have done is just emailed Wikipedia and said, hey, there's something wrong with my entry. Okay, we'll look at it and we'll fix it. It's very simple. Instead of having to pay someone to create 30 fake accounts and pretend to be who they're not. Just don't go there. It's like really bad place to be.
What about the idea of making a curriculum, like a MOOC, around Wikipedia content? Because obviously you have probably better or more up-to-date information than many colleges and high schools.
Well, I mean, I think there's some really interesting things to be done there. So, if you think of a topic that you'd like to know more about, I mean, for many of us, Wikipedia is the first port of call. So lately, I've been slightly obsessed with Ebola, as it's been erupting and so forth. So I ended up reading not just, we have an article about the 2014 epidemic, but we have the article about Ebola virus itself, but I didn't go any deeper than that because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go or whatever. And if there were a MOOC where somebody, it's sort of a 5-hour lesson, an hour, 5 1-hour sessions, where before each session, the biology professor who's presenting it says, here's your prerequisites. You've got to go read these 4 Wikipedia entries and this article or whatever, a couple of other things. Great. And then I go and I watch the video, which is them sort of explaining something, but I've got enough background in this. And okay, now I've brought you up to the point where, it's a hemorrhagic fever. I need you to go read the article on hemorrhagic fevers, and we'll talk tomorrow about that. Everybody's worried about, is it going airborne or not? Okay, well, here's 5 entries about methods of transmission of viruses. Go and read that, and then we'll have a discussion about that. That sounds really cool. I mean, I would do that. I would spend 5 hours doing that, plus the extra several hours reading the Wikipedia entries. And it would be great to have that kind of guided tour in a way.
Yeah, and it seems like you could actually modify Wikipedia to add kind of like FAQ or prerequisites or, a Wikipedia page could be written that way.
There are some things, we don't do a lot of that, but there are some interesting things like we'll say, this article is a part of a series on the UK government. So if you go to the House of Lords page, there'll be a sort of info box on the side. This is part of a series, the monarchy, the House of Commons, Supreme Court of the UK, etc. And so we do kind of say, here's a group of articles on a topic. If you're trying to learn about the UK government, here's a set of, 15, 20 articles that you might want to read. That's kind of nice.
So in some sense, Wikipedia is like open source, universal information. Where do you see this kind of going, or just in general, the future of the internet? And you've discussed this before, but where do you see this all going? What's the next steps?
Yeah, well, I think some of the next steps are going to be invisible to most people because it's the growth of Wikipedia in the languages of the developing world. So you may never notice, what's going on in Kazakh Wikipedia, but it's going on there. And that's
you have more Wikipedia pages now in other languages than English, I think.
English is still number 1, but yeah, by far. There's about, I haven't looked recently, 4.5 million English and 30 million total.
Yeah.
And the percentage of Wikipedia that is English has pretty much always been in decline. In the early days it was 100% because I set it up in English first and then it started declining. And then there was a point when it was no longer 50% and no longer 20% and so forth. And because of the rise of all the other languages.
And so what else can we open source out there? What can be the next kind of Wikipedia? There's sort of like an open source for code. There's now this open source for information. Do you ever see something like an open source identity sort of like how Facebook is a for-profit company for identity connection. I wonder if there's a not-for-profit way to open source that.
People have tried. There is the OpenID stuff that people have been doing. It's successful as a standard, but it hasn't been successful in terms of there being some kind of distributed identity network that allows you to easily sign in and say, this is who I am. Simply because I think Facebook had the resources to get there first. So, it's very common now if you go to lots of blogs and you want to leave a comment, you have to log in using Facebook. And they made it really easy. You just go click and then I'm on and then it's fine. And it doesn't 100% verify your real identity, but it's pretty good. And that's all you really need. And so that complex sort of idea of how would we do it in a distributed way or a nonprofit way never really got the chance to happen because actually Facebook works pretty well for that sort of thing. I think that when I think of that question, what are the next things that could be done in an open source way? One of the ones that I'm really interested in, and I've been talking about it for a long time and it hasn't happened, so maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it's just not time yet, is production of video and in particular animation. And there's some rumblings of this online now. But the idea is, let's say that I want to create an animated film to compete with, the best Pixar, something like that. So maybe I've written a script and I think it's pretty good and some people read it and they go, yeah, that's really good. Could I get together a community of people? Some are artists who can draw. Some have experience with rendering software. We could put together all the pieces. Somebody programs how the bird flaps and what are the open source. So there's Blender, which is open source software for doing this sort of thing. There's a Blender community. I think they're bubbling up into doing some interesting things. But so far, I haven't seen. I mean, the Blender Foundation, which is the sort of nonprofit that manages the Blender software, they've done some really cool projects. But they were really done in a more or less traditional-ish way. Got 100 people working on it. Lots of volunteers, lots of freelancers, but it's kind of a core group, and they're directing it from the top, and they got funding to do it, so they can pay for certain elements of it and so on. And they've produced some very nice shorts, 15-minute movie that's every bit the quality of a Hollywood animated film. But we haven't seen sort of 5 of those a week being created in the same way that we see Wikipedia entries being created, or random, funny meme pictures being created. It's always going to be harder, but I just think there's a really interesting possibility of folk culture coming. And possibly rather than somebody writing a script and doing it, maybe you just start out with a script that already exists. Let's do an animated version of Hamlet, and just do a fantastically rendered Hamlet, and it's something everybody can understand what it's supposed to look like, and somebody organizes it, and truly done in a community way with no money involved. And at the end, you sort of release to the world this 3-hour masterpiece of sort of the greatest animated Hamlet ever.
Seems like Wikia could start to do stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
or Rap Genius also could start to get into that area.
I mean, I think it's to some extent it's gotta come from that community, and it will bubble up from that community eventually. Group of people get together, and I mean part of that has to do with things like the speed of computers and rendering software. Do you need a render farm of hundreds of computers? Well, actually, these days you can just go to Amazon.
Yeah.
EC2. I mean, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but not that much to get 100 computers for a couple of weeks. Everybody could chip in a bit of money to do the rendering piece, or as computers get faster, you do it at lower quality. And there's just lots of things that the pieces are starting to fall into shape. Even sharing. Okay, yeah. So we've got a rough cut of the film. Everybody go download it. It's 4 gigabytes. Well, in the old days, that was a really kind of pretty heavy thing to do, but so was downloading a movie from iTunes, and now that's quite routine. So the more people who have fast enough bandwidth to upload and download, if I take a picture and I want to send you a picture, I send, here's a picture. If I've got an hour and a half long movie, I don't just go, hey, I've just emailed you a movie, just click on it and watch it. No, it's a big process still. That stuff is going to, it's faster and faster bandwidth. It just starts to go away.
I'm always trying to think of business models, given that, so this is one type of model, given that Wikipedia has gotten so huge, you're suggesting maybe some ways of having multimedia parts of Wikipedia where you can upload a script and then people can do different things or even rewrite or,
I mean, I think for Wikipedia, some of this is fairly limited. I mean, I think making animated films is mostly about fiction and so forth, but
there's fanfiction.net, which has a Wikipedia-like feel to it.
Yeah. I mean, I just think we're not done yet. I think right now things are bubbling up so I mean, this is encouraging people to think about this, particularly young entrepreneurs who are, may feel like, oh God, everything's been invented already on the internet, is to think about this. I just went on sort of a random chat about animated this and that and the other. So everything you needed, all of the technology to create Wikipedia existed in 1995.
And Twitter and...
Yeah, Twitter's another...
All the biggest sites, Yahoo.
Everything, yeah. And what we didn't have is But I'm going to focus... Twitter's... I've never made this analogy with Twitter, but I'll have to think it through. But with Wikipedia, the wiki existed. The software already existed. In a basic form, but it was there. Databases, web browser, everything. But it took 6 years for the social construct to be invented, really. How do you organize people? How can people organize themselves? What are the conventions you need to be able to make an encyclopedia in this way? So similarly, I think all the pieces of the puzzle are there for doing a collaborative Pixar movie. But nobody's managed to get the social bit. Nobody's managed to organize a group and figure out how do you do that. And I mean, I do think a big part of it is the free licensing. Because, nobody, if I say, hey, everybody, I'm going to make this fantastic movie, who wants to volunteer their time? And then at the end, you think, and then I'm going to sell it to the theater, I'm going to make $1 billion off a Pixar movie and not share the proceeds back. That's making people upset. And even, in fact, if there are going to be proceeds, it's hard to, how do you come up with a formula for contributions and how you're going to share it? It drives you in the direction of the firm, of starting a company and hiring people.
Right.
It's a valid way of doing it. But instead, with free licensing, you just go, right, it's completely open source. Anybody can copy it, redistribute it, modify it. We're going to create all the assets. We're going to create the characters. We're going to make sure that the character, the modern day Winnie the Pooh, is not owned by the person who created it. I mean, there's an interesting thing. Have you heard of this Slenderman character? So this is it bubbled up from, I think, from Reddit, or maybe from one of the image. Anyway, I think it's from Reddit. So it's a folk legend by a group of people who set out to create a new folk legend, and a lot of it has to do with editing old photos and putting this kind of frightening looking guy. He's about 8 feet tall, always in a dark suit, dark glasses, normally near children, and it's all kind of creepy, and he's way off in the background, and the pictures are actually kind of cool. And there's stories, child goes missing, and everyone reported that they just saw Slenderman in the background.
How do you spell Slenderman?
S, like Slender Man.
Okay.
Because he's tall and slender. And it's actually, as I understand it, it's a play on Enderman, which is one of the monsters in Minecraft. Huh. I don't really know why that started, but maybe the Enderman is named after Slenderman. I think that's what it is anyway, something like that. I'm not an expert in this area. But what's interesting is it's become quite popular as a meme online, and there's a lot of fan fiction and stories. And now apparently Hollywood's gotten interested, and somebody wants to make a Slenderman movie, and the question is, who owns the rights to this? And because that community was very casual about it, it's just a bunch of people goofing around online, it turns out, I think the guy who initially created the character and the word is claiming ownership of it, and actually has done some legal work or something. I don't know all the details. But the point is that it's causing a lot of angst in that community. That's something they thought was ours commonly, that we're all playing around with this idea and it's folk culture. Turns out somebody owns it, and that feels weird. So, I think the next iteration on that, people say, actually, let's be really careful to make sure that when we start doing this as a collective project for fun, we're going to make sure everything's under a Creative Commons license, that the basic framework, legal framework is there, so that we can keep it as folk culture.
So let me ask you. So you just came from the UN. Obviously, you're not. It doesn't seem like you're totally hands-on on any one project. There's Wikipedia, there's Wikia, there's your charity projects. What do you do all day long?
Every day is kind of different.
You travel a lot, right?
I travel a lot. When I'm in London, there's a certain type of day I have, which is I go in and I work with my assistant for a couple hours going through emails and like things and planning, and then I send her away, and then I do work online with the Wikipedia community mainly. That's what those days are like.
So sorting out issues at the high level of Wikipedia?
Yeah, just, talking to people about ideas and quarrels. I do a lot of different things. So every day is different from every other day, which I really like. And, not every day, but many days I see a post from you, and I'm a massive fan. And
Good.
And there's always a dramatic hook at the beginning, and I'm like, this is going to be good. And I set aside some time and I read sort of your latest thing. And I really like it. And I think I see my assistant, the one I normally send away after 2 hours, waving at me that I have to leave in 5 minutes. So I wanted to take a minute to tell your fans a bit about what I see before me. So he's got like a notepad, like anybody would.
A waiter's pad.
But it's a waiter's pad. It's literally a waiter's pad. Tax total. Thank you. Please come again. And he's got questions written. And I think I saw you say the other day you keep a waiter's pad. Because I wasn't thinking of that with the tax and tip. I thought it was just a white.
No, because think about it. You can't write a whole novel on this, right? So if you're taking notes, you could only write bullet points.
Yeah.
There's
lines.
There's a tables at the top.
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting in a conference room, I can kind of write the names of the people around the tables.
Wow.
And it keeps me focused on what I'm thinking. And if it's only 10 cents a pad, it fits in my pocket.
Amazing.
So it works. It's a good little life hack. There should be like a life hackpedia.
There should be, actually. There might be something like that at Wikia. I don't know. It's a good idea.
Well,
I actually used to have this idea for a wiki, and I've never managed to actually pull myself together to try to start it. I thought it would be cool to have a site. I think I actually owned the domain name for a while. I don't think I have it anymore. Spyskills.com. It's not about murdering people and poison. It's just like cool stuff, right, that James Bond would know how to do. So suppose you're suddenly, you're seated in a helicopter and you've got to fly it. What basically do you need to know? I just think it's cool.
I could have used that when I was getting divorced too.
Exactly.
Well, what's your biggest thing? What would you like to promote? You want people to use Wikia or keep on using Wikipedia?
Yeah. I'm working on a phone company now, the People's Operator, but we're only in the UK, so it's a bit early to promote to everybody. But 10% of your bill goes to the cause of your choice. 25% of the company's profits go to charity. And the only way we can afford to do that is by cutting out the marketing spend. So we say to you, look, you can sign up with Virgin and they'll spend a huge chunk of your money on TV ads and billboards, or you can sign up with us and we'll send that same amount of money to the Red Cross or whatever charity you care about. And then in return, what we want you to do is sign up your friends and family. So it's doing very well in the UK, and we're planning to expand globally, but we're not there yet. So
I'd also
to promote it, really.
I'd also encourage people to think of how to use Wikipedia in education, because it seems like you were talking about developed countries. It seems like a lot of places where there aren't schools, there's still Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah.
So this is a school unto itself.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. And once I was in India, and I was in Sangam Vihar, which is a squatter area in Delhi. So the people living there, it's on its way to being normalized now, but at the time they were just squatters and they were there. But they've been there for decades, so nobody was about to kick them out or anything. But there were no schools. And the parents create local private schools. So anyway, I met this young man in the street whose father owned the private school there, and the dad was there and so forth. And he said, "Oh, Wikipedia, amazing!" He's like, "I used it to pass my my 11th form exams, and I also used it to find pickup lines for girls."
Yeah, so there's a lot of uses of Wikipedia that you discover.
Education.
That's the beauty of an organic community. So, well, thanks very much, Jimmy, for joining us. Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia.
Right. Super.
For more from James, check out the James Altucher Show on the Stansberry Radio Network at stansberryradio.com and get yourself on the free insiders list today.
Powered by Snapdragon, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra elevates your photography to epic new heights. Snapdragon processors deliver a color experience like no other, with sharp, industry-leading 8K video capture. You can also snap images in 200 megapixels, capturing more detail than ever. And those late-night blurry pics are a thing of the past, thanks to next-level night mode. Experience powerfully moving premium photography, only with Snapdragon. Follow us on Instagram at Snapdragon Official.